When was the last time you tried to buy an event ticket online and had a remotely decent experience? I attend a lot of events, and every time I have to buy a ticket online, it is a nightmare. Too many fields to fill out, the instructions are poor and confusing, and I'm never sure if I'm filling everything out the right way. Plus, if I make a mistake or I have to go back and fix something, it's terrible. And the dynamic pricing, everybody knows that's horrible, nobody likes it. Why hasn't anyone fixed this? Does the experience really have to be this bad? Despite massive tech changes to almost every industry and online experience, the ticketing industry has barely moved at all in the past 20 years. Even the systems they use are so outdated, it's a joke. Also, the ticketing platforms exercise way too much power over the event organizers. If you knew how long the ticketing platforms held on to the revenue from sales before giving it to the event holders, you would be shocked. The Asia Tech podcast wanted to know how all of these problems could be fixed. So we invited Nicolas Deppenweiler, the founder of Desera, a Singapore-based startup who has set out to solve all of these problems and more. Let's bring in Nicolas now. Before we jump in, let's thank the sponsor of this episode, Dr. Tech. Dr. Tech can help you build your e-commerce store and start selling quickly online and on social media in just a few days. And Dr. Tech stores are gorgeous, modern, and responsive. They are fully customizable and simple to use. Dr. Tech stores have hundreds of included optimizations that will help you sell more online, and a support team that can answer all of your questions. With Dr. Tech, there are no hidden costs, no commissions on sales, no add-ons to buy. Everything is included in one simple subscription. So go to hellodr.tech/ATP to get a free trial and start building your store. You can find the link in the description below. Also, Dr. Tech is offering a special deal to the listeners of the Asia Tech podcast. After your free trial, you can get your first full month for only $1. To get this deal, simply type ATP into the live chat and they will send you a special promo code. Thanks again to Dr. Tech for sponsoring, and now let's get back to the show. So you're French, right?
Yes.
But how old are you? I have to ask.
I'm 29.
So you're 29 years old. Let's do some simple math. So let's subtract 7. So you were 22 when you arrived.
Yes.
And how long did you live outside of France when you were a kid? Because your parents were in the army.
So I would say probably 1/3 of my life before that. So half of it was basically in South America and the rest was in Africa as well. So
if you think about it, you've spent actually very little time living in France.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the funny part is like I have two sisters. One is actually living in Canada. The other one is living in Martinique. So it's kind of a family thing, I would say. None of us are actually staying in France.
But don't you think this gives you a completely different worldview? And there's nothing wrong with France per se, right? Like I haven't lived in the United States in 30-something years. And I think that the big benefit to me is it changes the way I think about the rest of the world, but it also makes me more adaptable. I'm wondering what you think you've taken out of this moving all over the world kind of thing.
I mean, definitely agree. I think you will. You see that the world is very different. So when I was in Africa, in South America, in Asia, or in Europe, people are just behaving very differently. So I would say yes, you get to understand how people basically are, and I think that makes you more adaptable. But that's also something that in the end, I think you are also looking for. So I mean that when you've been, in a place for 7 years, then you want to see something else as well. I think that's part of also of the journey.
Yeah, I think it's completely true. Like there's this idea of, should I settle in one place or should I just keep moving on because I want to either learn more or I just get bored in one particular place? Let's talk about Desera. I always think that the best entrepreneurs, and we'll get into what makes a great entrepreneur later if you don't mind, like they're trying to solve a problem that they've had. Right? I was teaching this innovation course once and the class asked me, like, where do we get ideas from? And I said to them, don't you ever have this thing in your day-to-day life where you're like, I wish somebody would fix this thing? And then I'm like, that's your idea, like fix this thing. So tell me, how did you come up with this idea? Like, why do you think this needs to be fixed?
So actually,
and what are you fixing actually?
Yeah, so it's exactly what you said. So actually, Desera, in a nutshell, we are building a kind of a next generation ticketing platform, right? Really in one sentence. The thing is, I used to attend a lot of events from an end customer perspective. I always felt that, buying tickets, resale, scam, basically it's such an annoying process to go through. And so I basically experienced it from an end customer perspective. I was like, damn it, you look at every other industry that have evolved so much over the last 15 years, and it feels that ticketing is the exact same way for the last 15, 20 years. I was like, why nobody has ever done anything about it, right? And so that's basically how it started, brainstorming with my co-founders, discussing with people in this space a bit more. Yeah, so really, really, that's really how it started, like kind of a year and a half ago now.
So normally I would ask you, like, run me through the process that Desera does, but I want to wait for that. I want you to run me through, and you don't have to name the name of any companies per se, although feel free to if you want to. But run me through the process of what a ticketing experience felt like to you. And maybe as you go along and explain that, just say, like, why would they do this thing? Why do I have to do that thing? Do you know what I mean? And then
Mm.
tell me how you're solving that.
So I feel for me is the way you currently have, let's say you experience ticketing is it's just a long process. I think we are living in 2024 in a world where people are looking for simpler is better, right?
Yeah.
You want to be done with things in 3 seconds. You want to have as little, apps on your phone as you can. And so
Yeah.
ticketing is a process where whenever you just want to go, let's say, to attend an event, and then you have to go into an app, potentially download an app that you don't want to download at first. You
Yeah.
have to sign in. You have the old billing ways. They ask you, to fill in your address, to ask if your billing address is the same as your, kind of your card or something like that. So it takes you 5 minutes, all in all, to buy your tickets on the existing platform. So it's just a long process that you have to go through, and so what we actually want to do is we go into that a bit more maybe later, but it's just to simplify everything, right?
Yep.
Make it easier for the organizer, make it easier for the end customer. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on it. I have found over time that there are a lot of events that I want to attend, and as I'm going through the ticketing process, I'm just like, you know what, this is too hard. Just like, never mind.
The,
Like
the
all
thing
this kind of stuff you should already know about me, whether it's on my phone, my native language, like all this kind of stuff you should already know. Why does it take me 15 minutes to buy a ticket when I can do everything else with like one click? Does that sound fair?
So that brings me to, I will say, also the vision that we have also at Desera is I think we are living in a world where those ticketing platforms that we all use have become so big, so much bigger actually than many of the organizers. So they are the one dictating the rules. What I mean by that
Oh,
is
yeah.
is they are, I mean, for financial reasons and so on. I can go into more detail later, but
Please.
basically
No,
they will.
go, go, go.
So if you are an organizer, you are relatively small, right? 99% of the organizers are not like Taylor Swift of this world, right? They
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
very small.
Yeah.
They have very, I will say, humble and modest ambitions when it comes to the events that they're organizing, but they are facing big ticketing platform that will, for example, withhold all the money until 7 or 10 days after the event. But you, on your side, when you organize the event, you have to pay the venue, you have to pay a lot of things. So I would say the overall ticketing process has been such a pain, not only from the end customer, which, as I mentioned, this is how it started on our side, but also from an organizer perspective. And those platforms have become so much bigger. They've made so much money. Why would they need to change the way they were operating for the last
Yeah.
15, 20 years, right? So we all know those platforms like Ticketmasters and so on, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Ticketmaster, at least from the news that I read, has run into a ton of problems, at least in the United States, for a bunch of different reasons that we can or cannot get into. That's up to you. But are they also running on some legacy systems as well? Is there a technology advantage that you have too? And it's not the only advantage, but is there a technology advantage that you have as well, building on a modern tech stack that they just simply cannot do because transitioning from whatever they built on 15 or 20 years ago to whatever the new stack is just takes too much time, too much effort, and it's just too big of a change of course, if that makes sense.
Yes, I mean, if this is the exact same as what we see with banks and fintech. Banks are too big. They are not agile enough. They cannot do anything, and that's why there is, a lot of like space for fintechs when you think about it. Because if the bank had the agility to
Yeah.
change processes, a lot of fintech would have not succeeded, doing what they did. So it's the exact same with ticketing, meaning that you face with previous platform that are so big that have not changed the way they handle payment, the way they handle operations for the last 20 years, which means that on our side, from a tech perspective, it's so much easier to come in with new technology. So we are also using blockchain. We can go into this in a bit more detail, but just simply, right, making payments. So we are partnering with Stripe, for example, which means that the organizer can create its own Stripe and then collect the money as it comes. So technically, you solve for these cash flow problems that they had, with other platforms, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like you and your team have done a ton of research on this. Like I hadn't thought about it before that the ticket company would pool all the money and then only pay you after the event. Like I always think about this in reverse. Like if I go to a restaurant, right? And I have this incredible meal. There are 7 of my friends there. It's like $1,500 meal. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll pay for this in 7 days. Like they would call the cops, right? They would literally call the police. Were there any other things that you can detail that during the research phase of building Desera you found out like, I can't believe they do that as well? Like are there other examples of this?
So it's a very good question because actually the approach that we have a very problem then solution then technology. I strongly believe that nobody really care about the technology that you're using as
Yeah,
long as you
nobody
solve
does.
for a problem. So
Yep.
what we actually did for the first 8, 10 months was actually to talk to organizers because we saw it from an end customer, but let's talk to organizers. So we talked to organizers across, Australia, Southeast Asia, Europe, music, sports, B2B, very countless organizers. And it actually felt like therapy. It felt like, oh, finally we can talk about our, our ticketing problems with you guys. So that's how actually we realized, oh, there is a actual problem. Because at the end of the day, is all the organizers would have said, we have no problem with ticketing. There is no business to build because at the end of the day, they are the one paying. So it's
Right.
always, as you answer, it's always like, um, you always go to the same restaurant. Next to it, let's say you always go to the same place to eat your pizza. Next to it, there is another
Yep.
pizza, but you just don't go there because you're used to it.
Yeah.
But actually, maybe twice as much better than the one that you try. So it's always
Yep.
that's the answer that we got. It's like, well, feels so good to talk to you guys, but we are using a Ticketmaster, we're using Eventbrite. That's just the way it has been. Feels like there is no other solution in the market. So that's really
Right.
kind of how things started.
Yeah, and tell
And
me, like, what other problems were there? I love this idea of therapy, by the way. They've just been waiting for someone to come and talk to them. It's like every other relationship. I just want to talk to somebody about how I can fix this. Were there any other issues that came up?
So actually, we had three main issues that always came back, right? So the first one is the one that we initially started, which was really the postulate we had at first, which is how do you guys handle secondary market, right? Which was the scam. How do you handle the
Oh
fact
yeah.
that people are getting scammed all over the place? We saw Taylor Swift, Coldplay, Bruno Mars in Singapore. How does it feel
Yeah.
that all your because at the end of the day, when people are getting scammed, you never see people like you are scammed at the Taylor Swift concert. You are not scammed by Ticketmaster. You see what I mean? Or by the solution. So
Yep.
it feels like the blame goes to the organizer, but then and then those Ticketmasters and so on, they're just looking sideways, like, hey, we did what we had to do. End of the story.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. They don't only look at it from a scam; they look at it from a data. Because we also know that from the big organizer, obviously this is only relevant to the one person that see secondary market as a huge opportunity. So the name that I mentioned. So they will look at it as like, what's the percentage of resale? What's the price that people are reselling at? What's the revenue that actually would come from C2C transactions? They look at it from a data side, right? Because we know in 2024, data is king in the way you are able to make decisions, but they are lacking every single data. But not only, you can also look at who actually owns the ticket. Because if you buy a ticket,
Yeah.
you will sell it to me. They will never know that I got the ticket. They will only like do all the marketing towards you. But maybe you sold the ticket, you actually don't even care about the event that much, right?
Yeah.
So they don't have any information. So that's really the big one, the big boys, right? The big agencies, the big promoters, the CAA, the AEG, the Taylor Swift, those ones. The second problem is the one that I mentioned, which actually is the one that the cash flow management, which is the one that we actually didn't really look at, right?
Yeah.
That's when you only know that when you talk to organizers, right? Because on your side, you pay wherever you pay, right? You don't know if it goes to
Yeah.
ticket, to even prior to the organizers. You just pay for the ticket, you get the ticket, end of the story. But the thing is, for them, they all told us, and this is true across 100% of the organizers, like cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. It came back all the time, right? Can we get the money quicker? And then the third one is the process. It takes me so much time to set up an event. It takes so much time for my customers to buy ticket. So what's the traffic that I'm actually losing on every single transaction because of the lengthy, 5 to 10 minutes process just to buy tickets? So that's the three
Yeah.
main problem that we have identified.
So can we go through these? The secondary market obviously is a fascinating thing. I mean, how does it work? If I buy a digital ticket, right? And let's say I print it out, right? So I don't have a QR code or I have it, but it doesn't really matter. And then I sell it to you. Like how do you fix that? Do you know what I mean? Because
Mm.
let's say let's say I buy a ticket and all I get is a QR code or all I get is some kind of code, but like I lose my phone or my email gets hacked or something, right? I've still paid for the ticket. Like, how do you fix all this? And is this part of the blockchain solution?
Yes, it is. But the funny part, before even going into the blockchain, because
Go ahead.
I'm not the biggest like, blockchain fan. What I mean by
Yeah,
that is
I get
like,
it. I get it.
I want to use technology that makes sense. In this case, blockchain, to build a product that speaks to everyone. So I want my mom to be able to buy second-hand tickets, right? If
Yeah.
she
So
cannot do it,
can I get back to the thing you said before that I really liked a lot? That was I identify a problem, I identify a solution, I apply whatever technology is relevant, and nobody cares about it, right? So to say like this is a blockchain solution is not the thing that you're saying. And you're right. Nobody cares on and the example I always use, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, is like, TCP IP. Like that's how the internet works. That's how messaging on the internet works. Your mother doesn't care about that. And she doesn't need to know because nothing she ever does says what's the internet protocol address,
yeah,
right?
yeah, of
She
course, of
just
course.
doesn't need to know. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so every single thing we're doing with the blockchain or not, I'm sending it to my mom. If she can do it, if she managed to do it, means
Yeah,
good. If she cannot, means I do something wrong. But even
exactly.
before going into this, whenever even before we built Desera, a lot of people told us, guys, you have to choose between primary market or secondary market. Like you
Why?
have to, because today you have the ticket master of this world and you have the ticket swap of this world, right? Um, so basically, whenever it's like secondary market, you will basically sell your tickets on Facebook Marketplace, Carousel in Singapore. You will have ticket swap. Basically, it's two different ecosystems. My vision and our vision at Desera is we believe that no, we shouldn't have to choose. Secondary market should not even exist if the primary market solution would have continued innovating, right? If Ticketmaster would have continued innovating like back 15, 20 years ago, they would have built an ecosystem where you can resell your ticket within the Ticketmaster ecosystem, but they didn't choose to do it. So they
Yeah.
feel today, to give a bit of background, they feel today that you hire me to sell the tickets. I'm sending my QR code. End of my job. I did what I had to do. Good luck.
Yeah, done.
So that
Done.
sounds like a you problem. So what we are doing, that's why we are trying to. So that's why we say no. We are going into the primary market because we feel that's the roots of the problem, and that's we want to build a new ecosystem. So what happens basically is an organizer will list an event. The ticket will go through this, but then when the organizer creates an event, he's the one that can basically add the conditions to the secondary markets. Do you actually authorize or not secondary market sales? Do you, if you do it, do you limit at existing fair, that it has to be the fair value of the event because you don't want people to make money from it? So
Yeah.
that's why. And how do we know that? Is because technically, I'm before actually working at this, I was working for Foodpanda. So my expertise comes from a consumer tech background. And what I
Go
mean by
ahead.
that is like the way you identify a customer is always like you have the device ID and you have the customer ID, right?
Yeah.
We add a new column, which is the wallet ID, meaning that every single digital entity, which is the ticket, will belong to wallet ID. So if you sell it from you to me, that goes from your wallet ID to my wallet ID, which allows me to track what happens, which allows me to track who actually owns the ticket, the percentage of free sale, blah, 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 blah. So that's the ecosystem that we're building. So we're trying to build not a ticketing marketplace, but an entire new ecosystem.
So I love making equivalencies here, and I was making some notes. I love this idea about combining the primary market with the secondary market. And I don't know how much you know about the stock market and IPOs, but I've been involved in thousands of IPOs. And what normally happens is if I'm involved in the syndication of the IPO, right? So my firm is responsible with a few other firms in selling the IPO to the end clients. What we also do is called market making. So once the IPO prices, once we sell it to those people, we make a market in those stocks. So we can keep track of where those prices are. We have bids and offers, right? So what I'm willing to pay and where I'm willing to sell it. And
Mm.
the idea, I hadn't even thought about this before, but the idea that the ticket market didn't work that way for this long is actually kind of incredible since the technology has kind of been there to do this for 25 or 30 years. But you're right, it's the brittle thinking about the existing ticket sellers and the fact that they got so big meant that they didn't have to do that. But I also love this idea. So does that mean that Tessera has a ticket wallet as well?
So yeah, we partnering with startups. So whenever whenever a customer basically sign up using Google, we are creating an invisible wallet for them. Again, I want my mom to be able to buy it. She doesn't have to know
Yeah,
that
so she doesn't need to
she's
know she has a wallet. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, she has visibility on it because we have, right? I think in terms of the transparency. But what I mean by that is like she just want to know that from an end customer, as you said, from an organizer, you want to know those, the primary versus secondary. You want to know what's going on. But from a
Yeah,
secondary, from an end customer perspective, you just want to buy a ticket. You want to be done with it. So basically,
yeah.
that's wherever you buy the ticket, as long as the price is okay with you or this is transparent, that's basically the only thing that you care about. So that's the I would say the difference that we're making. And to use an example, right, that you mentioned
Mm,
is I'm French. To As of now, there is the Olympic Games, right, happening in
yeah.
Paris. So a
Yep.
year and a half ago, I bought tickets, right? So they build their own ecosystem. And they actually say, hey, you can resell your tickets as part of the Olympic, website. You just go and resell the ticket. So I was like, oh, actually good experience to see how they do it, right? And so, for example, when I resold my tickets because I couldn't attend, um, you know what happens? It's like even to show you how lengthy the process is. They told me, so I bought the tickets. They told me, oh, we take 5% on the seller, we pay 10% on the buyer on every single ticket. But not only, it's like, okay, you take your fees, that's your fees. No, you do it the way you want. But they say, oh, you will receive your money in 45 days. 45 days. So so I'm like, 45 days, what would you need 45 days for? And so this is just about those process where everything is handled manually. You have people checking manually the tickets and so on. Yeah, so just to use the example of the Olympic Games, kind of to give a bit of flavor to this secondary market ecosystem.
So talk to me how Desera manages the secondary market trading, because it's essentially trading, right, of this asset. And can I make a point first or ask another question first? But remember this, I want to understand how the secondary market works. You used Coldplay and Taylor Swift as examples because they're two big bands, two big acts that are constantly touring and everybody knows their names, right? They hate it if they sell a ticket for, let's say, 175 bucks and then somebody has to pay 1,500 bucks to actually buy it in the secondary market, right, from some kind of
Mhm.
scalper. They hate that. And again, it's not because they're not getting the money. They don't need the extra 1,500 bucks, right? Because they're already wealthy. But their reputation is tarnished because now their concert doesn't cost 175, which is where they price it, but it costs
Mhm.
1,500 bucks. And it just changes the whole dynamic. So how do you manage that secondary market in a way to help them protect their reputation, but also to make the process, like, again, more transparent for people so they actually know what they're doing? Because sometimes
So,
you could buy a ticket that's fake as well, right? And that's a problem
of
too. We can
course.
talk about that later, but go ahead.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for the fake part, actually, for us, we are moving entirely away from QR code moving forward. So, what do you want to sell, right? Technically speaking, you can only choose to send the QR code, 20 minutes before the actual event, right? So, technically, you
Yeah.
limit by 99% the number of basically, black market and happening. But to go back to the question that you asked, for us, we are all about empowering organizers. So what I mean by that is like if you allow people to make money from secondary market, because you will have two different kind of players that we talk to. The other one that will say, I don't want anyone to make money from secondary markets because I don't think it's fair to make money basically on my back, right?
Yeah.
So I will
Yeah.
limit to the fair value, right? So in this case, no point for scalpers to come in and just buy tickets because you will be limited to sell on the platform. So how does it work? It
Right.
means that you have a profile, you choose resale, and then basically you basically choose the price based on what the organizer said you could do, right? But then some organizers, you mentioned the 1005. To be honest, some organizers they don't even care about this the reputation that much. What I mean by that is like on top of the data, they can make money from C2C transaction. So we're charging transfer fees that goes back to the organizer. So if today you buy, there is an event like
Oh,
$100, let's say 50, right? Um, so they're limited to like if I do it like 5,000 basically they're limited to the revenue that they're making, right? But if let's say suddenly you can make 6,400 because of C2C transactions, so if they look at it from also a revenue perspective, so some of them will tell you actually first I can make money, second if I see that people are reselling tickets at 1,005, then I know that my next event I won't charge 150. It gives me a bit of a more of a pricing strategy
sure.
moving forward.
I was going to ask that
So
too. Yeah.
so that's what we do is like you do the way you want, right? So that's from the condition that they initially set up when they actually even create the events.
Yeah, so when, and you're probably too young to remember this, but like when the first few versions of the iPhone came out, people would like wait in line for them from other countries outside the United States where the iPhone wasn't officially released, from mostly from Asia. They'd fly to New York or fly to LA and they'd buy like 10 of them. And then they'd fly home and resell them at a price that was ridiculous because people wanted them, if no other reason than for the status, but also because it was the coolest product out there, right? Um, and what Apple started doing was they started going, yeah, great, you can buy three, right? Like you can't buy 30 of these things. So there's a little bit of secondary market management there as well. But also, I can't imagine going into a pizza shop for the best pizza in New York and then walking out on the street and going, where there's a line. And I see these restaurants actually in Bangkok now, right? Because people will line up outside this very okay restaurant for like 2 hours. But what does that mean? If I go in and buy it for takeout, I can go outside and sell it for like double the price. It just doesn't feel right to me at all. Anyway, um, it does, like I was going to say, it doesn't feel like in any other market that that's okay, but somehow in the event market it is. But I do like this idea that you're gathering this data because again, in the stock market, we talk about price discovery, right? If I put a bid in the market and it just keeps getting hit, I'm going to change my bid. I'm going to lower it by 5%. And if I put an offer in the market and people just keep lifting my offer, I'm going to move the market around. And I guess
Of
you're
course.
suggesting that if you're trying to empower the organizers, you're giving them market data as well, data that they didn't have before because they didn't know where stuff was getting scalped. And now they can maybe reprice their stuff to a price that's fairer or at least more indicative of where the market is. Yeah.
If you talk to organizers today, and that's the reason why also you have more and more events organized across different, you see more and more conferences, in this part of the world, you see more and
Yep.
more, but they are very limited in terms of the data that they're getting. Not only secondary market, but actually, if you can, you can also look at the primary markets. They don't really
Yep.
get much. They don't really get the time of admissions of people. They don't really get all those metrics, that will give you more insights, for
Yeah.
you to build better events, right? So that's why actually you feel that the events they you know so in a way it has not been as professionalized as other industry because of less data to play around and less data for them
Right.
to be able to make better decisions.
Right. So how do you do this, right? Because I'm thinking this idea of like there's a ton of data, but people don't really want the data. They just want the insights that the data gives them, right? So are you collecting all this data, potentially anonymizing it, but still understanding like data cohorts and doing a bunch of data analysis and the organizer knows like, actually, I thought the Taylor Swift concert was like 80%, 16-year-old girls. And actually it's it's a 50% 40 and over, and then 25% 16-year-old girls. And the balance is like some combination of men. But once you give them those statistics, then maybe their targeting for their ticket sales can be better. And like you can change all of the market dynamics around this. Are you doing that too? Like working with the organizers, big and small, right? We keep using Taylor Swift, but still, I may want to make an event and I would need the data to understand what to do for my next event. And I'm not Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Mm. So I think for the time being, right, we are really staying more into the data such as the percentage of XYZ. Whenever you go into the demographics, that's
Yep.
GDPR compliance, that's something a bit
Yep. Yep.
trickier. So at this stage, it's just what data is more like. At the end of the day, I also believe that you need to talk to organizers to say, guys, what data do you need? Right, data do you need? So and so
Yep.
everything that we are in that we can collect through basically ticketing or payment, we can actually share that with you, right? Of course, from GDPR, obviously compliance and so on, you cannot share who is who, right? But you can just share some of the, I will say, benchmark, some of the group, for yeah. So that's a bit how we trying to do it, and I think data is something always like a work in progress, right? So it's like, what data more do you guys need? What data can you collect? What information we basically add as part of the process on Desera, but without, once again, without making it too complicated, so that we it's always a fine line between you want to collect as much data as you can, but then
Yep.
that platform becomes as heavy as others, and then basically you lose the edge on that front.
Okay, let's switch topics a little bit because I think this is really interesting. You saw me just like typing into the Google machine because I wanted to understand something that I didn't know before. According to the internet, Ticketmaster's annual revenue is over $16 billion. That is just a ton of money. Okay. So uh, this is going to make like a right hand turn, maybe neither I nor you expected. But if it's the case that like Tessera can get to $5 billion in annual revenue, which let's do it, yeah. Um, does it change you from only a ticketing company to also a fintech company? Because now you have all this money like going through the pipes, right, of Tessera all over the world in multiple currencies, in multiple locations, in multiple time zones, all this kind of stuff. Does it change the way you view the future of what Tessera can be? And does it open up the opportunity, right? So think about this. It also said Ticketmaster sells 500 million tickets a year. That's 500 million transactions. And if everybody buys like 5 tickets a year, it's still 100 million people. I don't know how many people it is, right? You're now talking about 100 million people you can sell other financial services to. Like, how are you looking at this idea of when you grow really big, what else can you do with all this money and all the resources and all the data that you have that are going through the system?
Yeah, so I think it's a very interesting question. That's actually a question that I also get a lot from VCs as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That, so um, so actually, we believe that ticketing is the easiest entry point into this space, right? What I mean by that
Go
is like
ahead.
we have more ambitions in the future, right? So let's assume that we reach size, and then we start to have big clients and so on. What we want to do is
Yep.
there is two roads that you can take. We don't want to be seen as an event ticketing platform. We want to be seen as an event management ecosystem, right? And what I mean by
Yep.
that is like you can go into financing aspects, so which is the fintech. So I can now,
Yep.
until now you were struggling to get money after the event. Now I can give you some money for you to better organize and to focus
Before the
on
event.
before the event. And then I can give you the money. I want you to focus on providing better experience for people, right? So that's one basically the fintech road that we could take. Another one will be when you talk to organizers, right? You have to find venue, you have to find a lot of things
Yep.
that it's not easy to find. Like why we could we'll build, for example, a marketplace or for organizer to mix and match basically venues and organizers and some promoters as well that can take ownership of some piece of it. So you can build a much wider ecosystem. That's what I mean by the event management ecosystem, where
Yep.
everything is accessible from the Desera platform, right? You get the ticketing, you get the payment, which is covered obviously, but then you get financing opportunity, you get kind of venue quicker as well. You don't have to yourself go to the venue to discuss with the founder to get it. So it's an entire ecosystem that we are trying to build.
So I'm going to give you an outlier opinion. If let's say I schedule an event, a big event, Money 2020, right? And I expect, or actually, let's go even bigger. Let's say the Singapore FinTech Festival, huge, 60,000 people. They're coming from all over the world, right? It's a 3-day event. And let's say some storm happens and the event just doesn't go off. There's an insurance aspect to this as well, right? I'm just looking at Ticketmaster's 500 million transactions and thinking, and the reason why is because I have the largest insurance podcast in the world, right? So I think about insurance in this context all the time. And the key is they're always looking for platforms for distribution for insurance products and for customized insurance products. And if Tessera gets as big as you expect it to get, you're looking at a massive opportunity in the insurance space to partner with a large insurance company that then says, we'll underwrite both the ticket delivery, the event delivery, all this kind of stuff that you're talking about. Have you considered the insurance angle for this as well?
Not really. I think what you mentioned is very interesting. I think that's the first time I hear it from, we know it from our financing and so on, but not so
Yep,
much insurance. But what you mentioned is actually interesting. Of course, this is even when you become big, that becomes even more relevant.
for sure.
But yeah, and this is a very good opportunity as well, depending on the size. I think you just have to be open to opportunities and players to partner with. Yeah, can be interesting,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah, we can talk about that offline whenever you want. What is the status of Tessera? Like, when was it founded? What's the status of it now? Has the product rolled out? Like, where do we stand?
Yeah, so right now we actually incorporated a business mid of last year. So
Okay.
we have a team of we hired, we have a team, excellent, very talented team of 6. on top of the two co-founders. Very engineering team, very product driven at this stage, obviously.
Yep.
So we actually started to have our first events back in March. So now we are talking to, I would say, much bigger events. So we have everything that's like the cash flow management solution is already available, cost, and everyone can basically use it. We are still building a bit. We are in the midst of finalizing the secondary market solution, which is the
Okay.
blockchain ecosystem. The reason why is because you have to find your product market fit, right? Even if
Yeah.
I build, even if I build the best secondary market solutions for the Taylor Swift of this world, they will come to me and they will tap me on the shoulder. They will say, "That looks amazing, but show me that you can, handle 5 million people connecting on your platform at all time." So you need to build your credibility to go there. And so that's how we
Agreed.
basically built Desera in terms of the go-to-market strategy, which is let's work with a lot of organizers that also can help us build the best platform possible when it comes to primary markets. And then we
Yep.
are trying to go slowly with bigger events and so on, which are actually some that we are talking to, so that we build this credibility, right? So for us, the go-to-market strategy is credibility, credibility, credibility.
Got it. What have you learned from the smattering of events that you've already done? Like the stuff where you thought like, oh, we didn't think about that thing. Do you know what I mean?
Um, okay, so one thing is the ecosystem is quite complicated. I feel that when you talk about ticketing, the reason why, I think there's two reasons. The reason why, for example, you don't have, you had a lot, back 5 years ago, you had a lot of ticketing, those like blockchain solution that comes in. You look at NFT, it's
Yeah.
obviously NFT tickets feels like an amazing synergy. But at that time, you didn't have any paying option, right? You had to buy with crypto. Minting
Yep.
tickets was very complicated. So at that time, it was a bit like good on paper, but sadly, it's not really the good timing.
Yeah.
What I mean by the ecosystem is like there is two ecosystems within the ecosystem. You have the ticket master of this world, right, which is for the big one, and then you have the Eventbrite, System, ticket, ferry, all those ones that are more mid to small size events. And so that's
Yep.
basically two ecosystems within the ecosystem. And independently, they work very differently. When you go to the big one, you have promoters, you have venues, you have, so you have the artist. The artist is signing a global agency. The global agency is working with promoters. The promoters is working with ticketing. It's a much bigger ecosystem, much harder to go through. But basically, what I mean is like the ecosystem is complicated, and sometimes you think it's simple. It should be simple, but then you have so many people to basically walk around and play with and just discuss. And some of the partner will tell you, "Oh, me, I'm an artist, but I don't hire any global agency promoter. I do everything in house." And then the other one will say, "Oh,
Right.
me, I don't want to deal anything when it comes to organizing like Aristal, for
Yeah.
example, in Singapore. I don't want to do anything." So those things, right? So it's just a complicated ecosystem to navigate in.
So you mentioned venture capitalists before. Are you funded?
So we did we've completed our angel round a few months back, like a year now ago. We actually joining AppWorks, which is the an accelerator in
Okay.
Taiwan, right? So it will be mainly very blockchain and as well as very consumer tech, which is exactly what we wanted. So in order for us to get this
Yep.
credibility and so on, we're actually looking to do our seed round. And I think just in a nutshell, we have a very different approach. When I told you about the the very I told you three problems, right? The first one is the
Yep.
blockchain, the second one is the cash flow, and the third one I said the process, right? I feel
Yep.
also we are living in, and if you look at Desera right now, we are building everything on intent. So because I'm a consumer tech expert, if I may say, you realize that when you build a
Please.
consumer tech platform, you only have two ways to build a platform. Do you focus on discovery or do you focus on intent? What I mean by that is like when you look at a Grab, for example,
Yeah.
why Grab is brilliant? Because when you look at the Grab transport, they 3 clicks, you're done, right? And that's the objective, right? You order your Grab, it's coming to pick you up. You don't have to open the app anymore. That's it. But when you look at
Yeah.
Grab Food, it's very discovery. You scroll up, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
left,
To search
down,
for
and
this
so
and
on.
that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you transpose that, when you look at ticketing, every ticketing platform have been built on a discovery engine. You go there, you have to download the app, you scroll up, right, left, and so on. But the thing is, when you look at ticketing, nobody is loyal to ticketing platform. They are loyal to the
No, nobody
artist.
cares.
So it has to be, for us, our strong opinion is that it has to be very intent driven. I want to be
Yeah.
done. So, for example, on Desera, right, there is we build something which for us was something, okay, we just do it, simple, we can do it. And that's something that a lot of organizers, oh, it's a game changer for us, which is you can buy a ticket without having to sign up. Within the IG or the Instagram ecosystem, someone can buy the tickets with Apple Pay in 5 seconds, you get the
Yeah.
tickets. We create in the backend. So what I mean is this vision of like intention over discovery is probably what also makes us different. And this is also, to go back to the VC topic, this is also a lot of the vision and the approach that we have that also makes us different on top of, I would say, the tech stack or the solution that we're building.
Yeah, because you're building an entire different tech stack if it's based on intention as opposed to discoverability. And you're right. Like, I don't care who sells me the ticket. I want to go see Harry Styles or whatever it is, right? And however I can do that in the way that's easiest for me. Like, I really want to be able to do it while I'm having dinner. Should we get some Harry Styles tickets? Let me do that. Boom, boom, boom. I'm done. Okay, give me the ketchup, right? It should just be that simple. We shouldn't have to worry about a bunch of different things. There's so many different ways you can do it. I'd love to see what the back end on this thing looks like. Okay, look, this has been amazing. I want to ask you one more question before I let you go, if you don't mind.
Okay.
What makes a great founder, right? Or a great co-founder? You're sitting there thinking, I'm working at Food Panda. I'm doing this thing. I'm learning about consumer tech, but I want to start my own company. Am I going to be a great, like, what do you think when you think about what makes a great founder?
It's a good question. And
I liked it.
it's a short question, but that sometimes require long answer. But in short,
Yeah,
for me,
maybe.
I feel um, I don't know if I'm a great founder, but I think I've learned, since I'm a founder, I've learned to listen much more than I usually used to speak. So I think for me is listen to basically. Being a good listener for me is something that I believe makes a part of what a good founder should be. And also you need to be able to know your strengths and know your weaknesses.
Yeah,
And so that you surround yourself with people that are much better than you at doing things you cannot do, rather than basically thinking maybe the corporate, I hire people just for the sake of hiring so they can just take workload away from me. So I think
right.
it's all about, curiosity, being a good listener, and trusting people, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to let you go. Nicolas Deppenweiler, a co-founder and the CEO of Desera. I think you're going to make it, man. It sounds
Oh,
really great.
oh,
I love the thing you're
hopefully.
building. Yeah. I really want to thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much, Michael, for your time and the opportunity. And looking forward to catching up with you in Bangkok or in Singapore when you are around.
Definitely.